Hey, welcome to the Weed Out, where we weed out the nonsense, talk about the bullshit happening in our backyard. I'm Spencer Fox Peterson with my co host.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joanna Booty.
Today is December 11th. We're recording this on December 11th, so hopefully you're hearing it this week. Just so everybody knows at home, Joanna and I do all this by ourselves, and we are not the, we're not Oscar winning editors. So, uh, thank you, everybody. I just wanted to thank everybody listening at home. We're learning as we go on how to make the show go and make it entertaining slash, engaging. Maybe not entertaining because some of the stuff isn't a lot of fun, but engaging. And we appreciate everybody tuning in every week. Obviously we can see how many downloads we're getting, and there's a core group of listeners. So shout out to all you listening at home. We appreciate you. And this is the time of year where we contemplate all the things that we do have. And yeah, I think I'll speak for myself that I'm grateful that there are people listening, and hopefully keeping people in, willing to hear different perspectives and sharing this with your friends. So that's what you can do for us. Share us with your friends, www.theweedout.com, obviously on all the podcast players. And we even have an archive video thing over on YouTube. Like I said, we're slowly learning all this stuff. We kind of are older millennials here. So, so anyways, thanks to everybody listening at home. It's a great outlet, and we've connected and networked with so many great people. And that's what I have to say for the month of December. And Joanna, I guess, how are you today? And do you have any thoughts on the housekeeping we just went over?
I'm doing well. I agree with you on the housekeeping that I'm very thankful that we have a core group of listeners. And at this point, I say that only because it means that there are people who have the same values as us, because a lot of the things that we platformers talk about on the Weed Out have to do with values and the way things are going within each community in Western Mass. And so I just love that there are that many people locally that do tune in regularly. And yeah, I just hope everyone stays safe and well as we head into another year. Um, yeah. How are you doing?
I'm great. Everything is cool. Um, in a previous life, in a previous working life, this used to be the craziest time of year. In my current life,
Yeah,
more stable. So I'm grateful I no longer am in the hustle and bustle of the retail holiday experience. I do,
for sure.
but that also means I try to obviously I'm shopping and spending less for, as one way to contribute to the ongoing issues in the world and foreign policy, and how our corporations are part of the problem. So I'm already participating far less in consumer culture other than my basic needs the last couple of years. And yeah, I just, when I do have to go to the store for, weekly food and sustenance and whatever random things for the house, hardware store, whatever, just being extra patient with the people working, and going above and beyond to like kind of bring a good energy, because they're having a rough go of it. Service workers this time of year get beat up emotionally, and they're working long hours, and they don't get any cut on the profits. So keep that in mind when you're shopping this time of year, even if you are, especially if you are trying to reduce your consumption in solidarity with oppressed, marginalized people throughout the world that this economy's backs are built on. So I don't know, just try to be kind to your service workers. And I think that really flows in, kind of dovetails nicely to today's topics. We're going to be talking about ableism in modern warfare and modern life and solidarity. So, when we're talking about organizing or speaking out, whether it's with our dollar or with our voices, not everybody can do that. Right, Joanna?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can talk about it now if you'd like me to, or I can talk about it
I would love to.
later. Yeah, so like personally, I think I don't talk about it much on the podcast, but I have a number of health issues that um leave me I would say mildly disabled. And sometimes it means that there are things that I can't do that I would like to do that if I were well when I'm as someone who was not um facing these challenges, I may have done things that I can't do now. So I think like after the pandemic specifically, and Spencer, you can share your personal experiences too, but I just think in terms of ableism and getting places, the way that we are able to communicate using Zoom, like we're recording now, or attend city hall meetings, or other meetings like that. I think for people like myself or others who struggle with potentially maybe just getting somewhere, that's huge. And I think that all that I can say without not trying, like I can talk about it more. I think another thing that I've realized in the past 2 years, ever since I've just had a number of issues, I think that, and it's, you don't see all of the ways in which ableism is embedded within society until you have to face those things. And that's really fun.
And everybody listening, we all will face disability.
Yes.
It's not
Or sickness.
it's not a matter if, it's a matter of when. It could be temporary or it could be permanent, and it could be visible, and a lot of it's invisible. So, something that's been great that came out of the pandemic is local council meetings being on Zoom. And when I say invisible, there's people that are agoraphobic. There are
Well,
people
yeah, so that's another disability that shouldn't be overlooked. Great point. Mental health too.
there are people that have phobias for germs, all the things, and they can still participate in the community because of the technology we have, and because we were forced to implement it. And think about with remote work becoming more and more common. If we invest in the infrastructure for high-speed internet, that means less people on the road. That's a climate win, right? But also, how many opportunities were created because all of a sudden now people had a hard time getting to transportation and getting into a building because they're in a wheelchair or on crutches for temporary. You don't need that. And think about all the time saved. Think about like the mental anguish of an hour and a half to 2 hour average commute every day is. So there's a lot of things that if we implemented with keeping people who are differently abled, we'll say, because it's not all completely disabled, just people are differently abled, we all benefit. Period. The fact that now that I can listen into city council and I don't have to go sit there. I don't have to, schedule 20 minutes each way to get down to city hall, find parking or however, wait for the bus, whatever you got to do to get there. That's more time I have for me. Or I can listen to it while I'm driving home from work. And you don't have time to get out of work, feed the family, and go to the meeting to do public comment. You can just Google in while you're fucking cooking. And the amount of participation goes way up. So, like, these things, if we consider the least of us, can benefit all of us. And I know it sounded like kind of left field when I brought up modern warfare, but the reality is in current day warfare and most warfare, it's about information. So, whereas in World War One, yes, news sources and information were vital, right? That's how those wars were won, World War One and Two, propaganda, to keep the people motivated to go through hell. You can't just draw battle lines now and shoot across each other for 2 years because there's cameras, there's phones. People won't stand for it. You can't keep them blind to it. So a lot of things that go on now, and you'll notice a lot of our military expenditure and police expenditure, because policing are an occupying army and they're at war with the working class. They have intelligence centers where they're trying to predict where people are going so that they can counteract with propaganda in action. It's very simple. So warfare, it's called fifth generation warfare. Um, and the reason I'm bringing this up during an ableism kind of chat with ableism activism and being part of your community is because now people who are not necessarily fit people to go sit in a trench and shoot at each other and waste life. We have people that have a different perspective. They're disabled, they're black, they're brown, they're Jewish, they're whatever, right? The playing field with technology is a little more level. So it's not a bad thing that some people, are on their Twitter account pushing back against disinformation or calling out bad actors. Like John Lovitz, the actor, has been saying some wild shit on Twitter, right? And it's like baffling. He's lost the plot.
He's getting dragged though, so
But that's the
he's
thing.
given the business, and he should be.
People aren't pushing back on his disinformation and his crazy and his replies. There is a subconscious thing. If they click on something crazy and like, that kind of sounds crazy, maybe they'll be inclined to agree with them or believe them, and maybe their mind will get changed. But if they see 1,500 comments of people saying you're an asshole, I'm not saying that's a good, like, people should think for themselves, but you can be reassured that if you're on the fence and you're like, I think this is kind of a dickhead thing, and then you see it confirmed by a mass of people. I think generally humanity is good. We're good inside. Most of us are good, and the people that do bad things are afraid. I don't necessarily think the majority of people that do bad things, I don't think they're doing it to be malicious. I think they're afraid personally. There are malicious people. I mean, Henry Kissinger, for one, rest in piss. Um, and countless others, and nameless, faceless people we don't even know about. But I guess what I'm saying is there is beauty in all this. So don't let anybody tell you if you're only posting about something that's not doing anything. It is doing something. It's keeping the idea alive. It's keeping it on people's frontal cortex. Not frontal cortex. Sorry, few psychologists. It's keeping it on the forefront of people's minds. And I think there's a role for everything, because fifth generation warfare is everything. Kinetic warfare, of course, is always going to exist as long as we allow the weapons to be made. So now that you can't just go burn down villages as easy, like, it's not going well in the PR war in Gaza. Let's just be frank. Like, the Western Empire, US, Israel, etc., have really lost control over this narrative, and people are seeing through their bullshit. And part of it is because of social media. Sheer numbers.
Yeah. I think it's important to note that though, that certain people who are differently able, their only connection to society beyond maybe the people that help them or whatever might be the internet. And so if their only means of like sharing true information, or if their only way to like be activists are through those means, I think I'm happy that they have that outlet. I don't find it to be any less. I think that everyone should just be doing what they can. And I think it's good to have that connection.
It's really tempting to say, oh, that person's a social justice warrior, or there's no sense in posting about it. Really easy to say that. I see why people would say it. I get it. I can see, like, well, you're not taking a real risk. You're sitting on your couch. Well, people get fired for what they post online all the time. So that you are taking a risk with your livelihood. In capitalism, they say you're free to do any job you want, but you're also free to die. So, life or death really does matter when you speak out and you put a digital footprint. Like, it is a risk for some people to speak out about whatever injustice there is, or advocate for themselves, even.
And for some people, it might be the only way that they can speak out. So I think, careful, Big Red. I think in those cases, it's not for me to, if someone's only way to like access and speak out is online, like I can't really, like I have, they
It's a
should
real
have
space.
It is. I mean, I find so much information. I used to like, especially in like 2010 to 2013, I would find out so much like actual news from Twitter. People just sharing like on the ground, independent journalists sharing information far before the big box media would share stuff. And I think the connection that people don't realize that they have with like social, like if you're able to be social at all and that and you're not differently able to the point where it impacts that, the internet just provides an entirely, it's like a new world. It's a not just for activism but for everything.
Yeah, not everything is tied. Yes, I think building physical relationships in community is very important because we do need the people right next to us because the internet isn't real life, but in a way, the internet affects real life. So don't be careful when you're talking to people about what you think the internet, like, oh no, I always joke the internet was a mistake, but it's like, no, the internet gave power to people that had no power. It also, it's just like nuclear power. Sure, nuclear power, you can create quick, relatively clean energy. But the problem with nuclear power is you can also go boom by mistake or on purpose. Yeah. Uh,
And I think like some people thought you're right. And I think some people's argument might be like, okay, like I wouldn't want to like maybe be online doing this or whatever. And that's fine. I think some people, like we've talked about this before, like everyone has different things that they're able to do. And yeah, I don't know.
well, think about the reason you and I started the podcast. So
Yeah.
we could just say something once and I don't have to go waste my time at cocktail parties and business gatherings to fucking tell people how our system's crap and it's fucking killing itself. Like it's a dumb system because it inherently falls in on itself. Like it's so fucking, like, capitalism's stupid in the sense that it can't perpetuate. It can only eat and eat and eat until there's nothing left and then it starves. It's why we keep having these fucking resets, like these recessions, and it's a fucking dumb system. So just based on 100 years of me looking at it, I don't think it's a good system. But you know, it's not to say that there aren't things that work about capitalism. It does drive people, right? But same thing with ableism, right? Ableism has brought some great I'm sorry, let me rephrase this. Ableism has kept people out, but now that money and capitalism drove technology to make personal cameras so we can all become walking advertisements, some byproduct of that is it's given agency of people that weren't traditionally TV worthy. I don't know how else to put that. And I just think it's we live in a great time. So we do have to be grateful for this. So don't put people down that their only activism is internet. Now, I don't think that can be the only thing, but like we all have a different role, right?
Well, and for some people, it can be the only thing. It may be the only way that they are able to interact with you or leave their house. Like, we do not know, like you said, like, I'm not even going to get into it, but like, I have missed multiple trainings and things over the last few years where I could just not go. I couldn't even attend on Zoom. So if people's only way is to like post a stupid meme or like have a fight with someone on Facebook, I don't know.
It's
Have at it.
it's
You
good.
do you.
Ideas cannot be killed if you keep them present.
Well, and yeah, like, and if it's not stressing the that person out to be, sometimes I guess what I'll say is I have to take media breaks because it can be stressful.
Oh, I treat it.
However,
Sorry, excuse me.
what were you saying, Denny?
I just say I treat the weed out social media accounts like a job.
I, I know you do.
I
But
just
even with that, even with my job, I need breaks sometimes. So
no,
for
no. It's what I'm
me, like,
saying. Like I literally like partition like time. I'm like, this is when I'm going to do this, and this is how the energy I'm going to bring to it.
that's fair. I mostly do that, but I like so with personal
I do
social
it. I
media
don't do
because
it.
I engage in personal social media. I have to take breaks even because it can be a lot. So like if someone who's disabled has to take breaks, I understand that too, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Because it's a lot of it, like we're not supposed to get this much information all at once either.
No, we are. Everybody
It's
is.
overwhelming.
Everybody. everybody, I mean everybody,
Everyone.
is living in a state of hyper stimulation, which is traumatic and hard on the immune system. The human population is extremely stressed out. We were not meant to drive in cars at 60 miles per hour, making decisions, life or death. That's why people have road rage, because their amygdala is fucking set to 10, because you're actually doing a really dangerous fucking thing. And I know it is easy to get complacent when you drive, but there's a reason when somebody cuts you off, you go fucking berserk because your mind knows we're not supposed to move this fast.
Yeah.
Like our physical matter can't withstand an impact at this speed. Like it knows. So the chemical, so but our culture and population as a whole, because of all the stressors going on for generations now, since fucking European colonialism and probably before that, but this world is so interconnected and we're all feeling the same trauma, some worse than others. Like you and I in the imperial core in the West, we have clean drinking water. We have things going for us. So like I can admit we have privilege, but your brain doesn't know the difference between a car crash and constant crises happening outside of your control.
Well, and no, and like, and then so people who are facing issues that may leave them differently able to, that's why I'm saying like we just have to accept what people can do is
And this,
enough, because they could be dealing with so much personal pain, personal issues. Like it's just whatever we all can do. That's all.
and there's a famous communist saying about that, I always missay it because I'm like dyslexic when it comes to famous quotes, but it's essentially, you know, you get everything you need in return for whatever you can do. It's not tit for tat, it's not one for one. It's like a good relationship with your in the people you live with. Like, yes, I don't necessarily do 100% of laundry all the time, right? But I do other things that they don't necessarily do 100% all the time. Whoever, how you split up chores. Every
Totally.
to do it. Some people physically can't lift the bag of kibble into the fucking the bin. Like they got a bad back or whatever. So yeah, I'll do that. And I've lived with people that had back issues or whatever. And we're all struggling with something, and sometimes it's invisible, sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's both, sometimes it's temporary. Like for the last month, I was pretty banged up from work. Like I hurt myself on the job, but not bad enough to miss work. Um, just nagging and just some things I couldn't do very comfortably, but and that was temporary. Um,
But you also suffer from an invisible potential
yeah,
disability too.
so I'm diabetic. Um, and then there's
And I only said it that way because I was going to say BBs. So I don't like usually say people suffer from something. I don't
yeah,
mean to
by the
phrase
time
it
you
that
notice
way.
somebody has diabetes, they're missing a foot.
But
So
you don't always, that's why you don't always see. And then mental health stuff is another, I think, big one that people just overlook completely.
I just assume everybody's suffering from some sort of PTSD whenever they
I know.
and it's honestly like giving people that kind of grace. It doesn't excuse behavior per se, but it makes you understanding it has gone a long way for me not getting really frustrated with people. Understanding like what is going on there that they don't have enough time, they don't have a lifetime to tell me what happened. So
It's true.
you got to give grace to people. You got, for example, I participate in online sparring with whether they're a big account or there's somebody saying something really hateful, especially if it's local. Digital space is no difference than a personal space, in my opinion. So if you're saying some bigoted stuff, I'm going to say, hey, it's some bigoted stuff. Get the fuck out of here with that. And I'm willing to be corrected, and I'm willing to put stuff on the record. Um, but end of the day, these spaces that typically get demeaned, especially by powerful institutions. Oh, that's just online discourse. That's just that. It's just that. It has real life implications, and it's not always bad. It's not always the January 6th insurrection. It's not always QAnon. Sometimes it's people learning about the atrocities happening in Gaza, the West Bank, Yemen, Syria, Sudan, Congo, go on and on and on. And this is because of people doing quote unquote, armchair activism. I wouldn't know anything unless there was people fact checking and reframing a lot of what, say, CNN or MSNBC is putting out, highlighting how instead of saying officer assaults civilian, they say officer involves shooting. And they took other people highlighting that, and me seeing that from lots of people commenting that, being like, oh shit. Yeah, like sometimes it is a cumulative effect. Like we brought up multiple times in the show, body worn cameras, right? I used to think they were good. And then seeing people talk about it in online spaces and in person at like police accountability forums, it changed my mind. So it's important to keep the ideas out there and don't discount people because of whatever their perceived abilities are.
Yeah. I think that's a really good message and point.
Yeah. And we all do what we do. And being sometimes that requires being honest about what you can't do, what you're not able to do. And I think there is an honesty that intersectionality activists that I've mostly interacted with online, there's something about that there. They get it. Like I can't go march and protest, but I can put together a video debunking this New York Times article about retail theft and blaming retail theft when it's actually incompetence of management, which is something that just came out recently. Like those stories were debunked 6 months ago, but now the mainstream media is finally catching up to it and saying something themselves. So without people that can only type or make videos, I was informed about this, and I'm not shocked that they're trying to fucking backpedal now that the numbers are out, right? So again, thank most great contributors to this world were differently abled. I can think of a million musicians, for example, and they just bring joy. They're not even necessarily inventing something, or I'm sure half the inventors in the world were building stuff out of necessity because of something they lacked. Right? Um, so ableism is really tricky. It gets brought up a lot, and there's a lot of things that are ableist and people don't even realize it. I don't know. I think
Yeah, it sneaks in. I can't give good examples, but it like very often creeps in ways that are so small but still so impactful. Um,
somebody says, "Oh, you don't like something, uh, do something about it."
yeah, that's true.
It's like when you see
That's true. Like we can't you can't not have diabetes. Like,
right,
it's like such a fucked up thing to say to someone. Like,
and
okay, I just won't have this issue with my foot. I'll just not have it.
so we just always be aware of like how could am I saying something that's potentially disregarding people who have done vital things for our communities over the generations, and we do it a lot. It's a very common thing in America, saying like, oh, you belong in the loony bin. That's an ableist fucking thing.
I
um
know, and I say it, I've said it on
no,
the
so
podcast this
baked
whole
in.
time. I say like crazy or insane and like I feel terrible. And the only way that I'll try to stop everyone. The only way that I justify it in my own head is that I have been called those things so many times and I'm like I have my own mental health issues. So I'm like, I know it's terrible to use those. So I do apologize to anyone who's been offended by that. And please know that I am working on it. It's just mentally, like Spencer said, so ingrained that it's hard. And
Like there's another one we've all said, and I've really made a conscious effort to like never do this. Have you taken your meds today? Never fucking people say that shit.
people used to ask me that until like for a year, like it's only
Right?
been the last
I'm not talking.
10 years maybe.
This is like something I've heard at work.
Yeah.
not my current job, but like when I was younger, that was a common thing to be said to somebody, and that's really fucked up.
Or like take a pill, but chill pill was a thing.
Okay. I'm thinking the more aggressive. Have you taken your meds today? Implying that you're fucking.
I I know, but like even take a chill pill as a microaggression just makes it cuter. You know what I mean?
No, it's my biggest pet peeve is the one that and everybody I've seen priests, seen holy all sorts of people say this. We're doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity. It's like no, that's wrong. You don't understand what the diagnosis of insanity actually is because they're not on our plane. They're somewhere else.
Well, and
So they don't
I
even
don't
know
even
they're
think
doing the same
I
thing.
don't think people are even determined, like diagnoses don't include that term.
That's
So
the,
that's why I
doing
think
something over and over again and expecting a different result is stubbornness. It's the definition of being stubborn. Don't equate it to a mental health issue. Like insanity is a real thing and they don't have control. They don't, they're not
yeah,
healthy.
like people with mental health issues. And I do think I have to look this up now that we're talking about, but I think insanity was created as a legal term. But I do not think that you're like diagnosed as quote. That's why I feel bad that I say
Just something
crazy or insane because I think it's more of like a mainstream thing or a legal term.
right. And it was probably something to deal with mouthy women.
Well, yeah, they would call us. So there is a diagnosis called, I do have a background in clinical psych, as I've said to some people. So like histrionic personality disorder always drives me crazy. And that's the thing about the diagnostic manual too. It changes. Like at one time, being a homosexual was considered a mental health issue. Yeah, it was in the last, well, no, two. So now it's two behind. So there was a four and like we're on to five now. But yes, not too far. So in not too long ago. um, but so that's why with an histrionic personality disorder is very much kind of based on that concept of like women's being hysterical and going into histrionic.
Yeah, and like to be
It's
real,
ridiculous.
a lot of Western medicine is ableist.
Yes. And so even that stuff
Trying
like
to
you're saying,
label
like
that when
it's
people are
everything's about a label.
trying to blame the individual for reaction to an environment and the climate they're in, it's so backwards to blame the individual when a lot of these things can be attributed to the system they're in.
For mental health stuff, you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how in my opinion, I'm not trained, but based on what I know, I think going to therapy is great, but you have to be careful with your therapist because it gets real eugenicist real quick. But like that's what sucks. It's like you have to like
It's so scary. You have to like vet your therapist.
they think like I'm gonna go get help. And
I
they just
know.
and then they're gonna listen to the person in front of them because they have that medical degree, which is rooted in some really weird shit. And this isn't me. I'm not rejecting modern
And like
medicine.
not all therapists can diagnose you either. That's the thing.
And then we can get into healthcare. But again,
I'm just saying, so people out there, if you ever go to a therapist, if they're not like a PsyD, like a psychologist or a PhD or an MD or a PhD level like diagnostic person, like a therapist can tell you what they think you may lean towards or like their thoughts, but that's not an official diagnosis either. And that's sometimes a red flag for me if people are just like randomly handing out diagnoses
right? Well, they kind of have
when
to.
they shouldn't be.
But like
Hmm?
like for
Well,
example,
no, but I mean, like certain level therapists aren't the ones that should be doing those things.
right? And I think about like even the existence of something like neurodivergent and neurotypical and how they're on a spectrum because it implies that people that are suffering from or not suffering, experiencing neurotypical symptoms, we'll call it. That's not a symptom. That's baseline. But that's like this is all trying to fit into a supremacist, colonialist, capitalist.
Well, yeah. So I'm sorry to say that with the diagnostic, it should be by a certain person, but that is like how the diagnostic is set up. And then with what you're saying is absolutely correct, but the spectrum for neurodivergence, and it's specifically autism, but neurodivergent issues in general has changed so much in the last 20 years that unless people, and I know that they do have to like keep up with their like educational professional stuff though, but I think for people who face like neurodivergent issues and autism, I would want a therapist or someone to help me that was maybe very focused on the newest and most cutting edge treatments and approaches. Because in the past, a lot of people that went like neurodivergent people are upset from the past.
I'd want the therapist or counselor to have a handle on what's informing in the context of said theories and practices. You know, like my
Just a lot has changed, even just the approach of autism. That's all I'm saying.
right. And again, I just think there's a red flag if in the manual it says they have a strong sense of justice is somehow a symptom. And
I know it means you could have autism.
that's fucked up.
It is. It
Because
is.
they can't overlook an injustice.
I know. I know.
I understand injustice can mean a lot of things. Like it can be a personal, very personal thing where you think that person getting more cookies than me is like, or me not getting twice as many cookies. Like Donald Trump thinks everything that's happened to him is an injustice. So I get it. Like injustice can mean a lot of things.
It can.
But
It's like that's the other part of a diagnosis. It's so like it's interpreted differently by different people. So again, if someone is diagnosed out there, you could always seek a second opinion too.
like if a little kid is like, I don't want to go to school anymore, I don't like it there, that's perceived as them being difficult rather than prioritizing their personal safety and what they define as personal safety. And like, I don't know, like we treat kids like they're disabled.
Well, yeah, and oftentimes women, I've told you this off
That's
of the recording, and I've maybe said it on the podcast, but I don't know, like many people infantilize women to the point where I sometimes can't believe how people speak to me, an adult 40-year-old woman,
well,
in multiple scenarios.
so I'll tell you the straight up truth. Everybody, no, nothing to hide here. I grew up a straight white guy in, ex-urban Boston, just south in Quincy. I played sports, played football, played everything except for hockey because I'm uncoordinated. Um, and one of the first jokes that I was taught as a young, pubescent teen was I was out with my uncles and my dad, and they were day drinking beers, nothing crazy. And we were driving home, and they said, remember, if your wife or your sister ever asks, how many beers did you have? Divide by 3. And the implication is we don't want to upset the women folk because they worry that we just had, 8 beers and drove home.
You would be like, so they're like telling lied about it.
Yeah, treat them like they don't know what they're talking
Well, yeah, and my dad would have probably said like, and you're doing this to protect their delicate nature.
Literally, that's the implication. So like,
no, I know it is. And in the same way, my dad would have taught me how to he would have taught me how to defend myself. It's just so wild though. It's so wild.
I'll be honest with you, for the time, I think my dad and my uncles, for the time, for the culture in the 80s and 90s, they were a little more woke, like in a way. Like
my dad was too, honestly, about women, shockingly.
That was their extent.
Shockingly.
They didn't make comments to my sisters about like what they were wearing. They weren't controlling in those ways, but they still had this contempt for their supposed peers, whether it's your sister or your mother, or your wife, because that's supposed to be your peer, but they're one B, they're not quite your peer. They're still slightly, you're slightly still in charge, so they don't have to know the whole truth. And I dead ass remember just being like, me being my sense of justice dumbass said to him, I was like, why don't you just tell him the truth and tell him to fucking deal with it?
Oh my God. They're like, obviously you should
Like
lie.
to me, in my fucking logical brain, you want me to be a tough guy? No, you tell them, deal with it, and that's not just them. That's anybody.
Right, I hear you.
Yeah, I played 2 rounds of golf today. Deal with it. I wanted to. Like, now, does this mean you should blow off like family, responsibilities and leave your wife to do all your chores? No. But they would probably imply that. Yeah. But we can't lie to them. I mean, no, we have to.
Yes, but they would lie about it so that we
Yeah. It's
felt
like, no,
better.
just fucking say you're not going to do it. At least be honest with them. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
the lies to keep us like from the justification of lying to keep women safe and happy is always been a thing.
and it's the intersectionality with being ableist.
But
And
it's like, so that's why I have that story about my dad that like he was pretty good considering he was evangelical and he passed away at 76 in 2021, and he told me Santa wasn't real when I asked at 2. I was 2.5. And like my mother was ready to kill him, but he wouldn't lie to me about it. Even though like I feel like
it's pretty
the
woke.
church the church was like in my opinion lies, but I feel like that I don't it's different to me because I think we were all raised by either like a Catholic or a Christian church family, but my dad felt like he just wasn't going to lie to me about it. So for years I had to keep Santa a secret. But I always then trusted my dad. But I couldn't believe adults wanted to like lie to us at such a large scale.
Right. And that carries on into adulthood.
Yeah.
And
I think I wouldn't have trusted him though if he lied to me. So I was always really thankful.
so if you're doing, traditional gender stereotype life living, whether you're man, woman, right? That is, if you're willing to do that, you're probably accidentally ableist too. You know,
What if you're living with
if you're
two
living
people?
like willing to live in those worlds, you're probably likely passively eugenist and ableist in a lot of ways. That's just my opinion, though. What do I know?
Well, there's so much baked in, like you said, even just in the
It's all
language.
like it's frustrating for me as somebody once I see a pattern, I can't.
Yes, you keep seeing it. It's hard to unsee it.
So it's like, yeah, of course we have to like talk about ableism. We have to talk about ageism. We also have to talk about all the things, misogyny, patriarchy, and how it all intersects. But it's just like it's all the same bullshit. It's the same hierarchy building, and the genius of the whole system is there's all these overlapping hierarchies that are kind of doing the same thing. um, but I think that was a pretty loose conversation on our view of ableism, and just keep in mind your comrades. Who you just they might not even know where they struggle, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There's not a fine definition for everything, and people got to do what they can do to keep themselves safe, and also they can change the world. I mean, shout out to one of my favorite creators on Twitter and on TikTok, Amani, I believe that's how she pronounces it. Her handle is Crutches and Spice.
Oh, I love them.
It's
I
amazing.
love that handle and I love all of their content.
So she's very feisty.
And I'm so thankful for them.
She's a truth teller, and she's a disabled person. She's been disabled since she was born, and she's incredibly knowledgeable, and she's done her homework, and she's lived it. So if anybody's looking
And
for
their content's really good too. Really, really good.
super engaging, uh,
Yes.
keeps you keeps you listening. She's not one of those people that drones. Like, she does do long form videos, like
Yeah, they're so good though. I love them.
and
All of it.
rambling. She's very good at communicating. I
Oh
can't.
yeah, she gives you the business.
So I recommend anybody at home, if you're looking for a new somebody to listen to, or hear their perspective on different things. Her favorite thing she said to the internet in the last month was, to all those liberals saying you have to vote for Joe Biden. She's just like, just shut the fuck up. If you really want him to get elected, you need to shut up, because you're turning people off even more. Like, you yelling at people, like calling out their fascism, like the
And can we please listen to Black disabled women because thank you.
and like,
Stop telling people how to vote. It's
yeah,
not
this has gone on
democracy.
too long. It's been going
It's too
on my
much.
whole, so I presume it was going on before this.
Oh, absolutely.
One person, one vote means they get to use their vote anyway. So instead of telling people you need to vote for Joe Biden, you need to vote blue no matter who, sell us a candidate. If you really believe in him, campaign for him. I don't know, organize or push this motherfucker left. But don't tell people they have to vote for somebody. Like, that's not democracy. Like, I don't understand how this, like, threatening you with fascism is a political platform. Like, and how is that not the cousin of fascism?
Ugh, it's so like upsetting. It's like, shut up with this.
So
Look what we have. You know.
it,
Yes, so we're thankful for this person and follow them.
yes, please follow
Monty
them.
is awesome.
And speaking of Democrats, ties us into Guillory and tomfoolery
Oh, yes, it does. It's so
as
goolery and
always.
tomfoolery.
So the same party that is telling us we have to vote for Joe
Can't do
Biden,
anything.
or we get fascist Muslim hater Donald Trump, while we're the current administration is bombing the fuck out of brown people all over the world and paying for it and telling us that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism and telling us words aren't words. That's a different discussion than today, but we're in a state super majority, Massachusetts, very little opposition to the Democratic establishment. Northampton, Western Mass, and maybe a few pockets of just outside of Boston are progressive. For the most part, these are center right political people who believe in not even FDR austerity. I don't know, Lyndon Johnson austerity. They're it's a super majority, yet nothing can get fucking done ever. So you own, like, that's why I'm over this whole vote blue no matter who in the federal level, because it's like we have that here and they don't get shit done and they hold us all hostage. For example, lieutenant governor and secretary of state, three women that use their identity to get elected, took a 20% raise. Meanwhile, the
Cool.
budget that was passed almost a year ago, 6 months ago.
So the budget for the teachers unions in the state, which makes up tens of thousands of people across the state, including staff, was voted or was decided upon in July. So our fiscal year is July 1st.
So it's been almost 6 months since this budget was passed, and because of the mechanisms of the House and the legislator, after they pass the budget, they have to then pass each supplemental budget, which would include things like bonuses. That's roughly how I understand this. And it's needlessly draconian and complicated, and they use this as cudgels so that way they can do whatever the fuck they need to do to pressure each other into other political action that's unrelated to, say, I don't know, giving the agreed upon yearly raises to multiple government jobs, but specifically Mass Teachers Association, which Joanna is a part of. What's frustrating to me is we have a supermajority, and yet you still are, things that oppositions use to slow down the works, to gum up the works, your own party can't get over. So the ghoulery and tomfoolery, obviously, like, the Mass state government is one of the most ghoulish, as Andrew Khmer and Jeff Raymond have talked about on our previous episodes. All three branches of government refuse to fucking share records and transparency. They have draconian laws there, and this current government is using the draconian laws to drag out a budget which affects rank and file state workers like Joanna, who is, full disclosure, technically a state worker.
Mhm.
In the teachers union, or a part of the teachers union.
One of them, yes. They separate, divide and conquer. So even our unions are divided, but I think there are over 90 across the state.
So I pulled the headline for ghoulery and tomfoolery. Typical Mass Live corpo, big box store media headline. Mass Governor Healy signs $3.1 billion budget bill, Bay State residents react. It was posted on December 5th, 2023 in the morning. So just a couple days ago, 6 to be exact. And I'll read the first paragraph here. Governor Maura Healey has signed a $3.1 billion budget bill that would, among other things, finance the state's under-resourced shelter system through the rest of the fiscal year after it was approved by both chambers of the legislature on Monday. Quote, I am proud to sign this supplemental budget that dedicates critical funding. I'm going to bring it up on the screen here.
Mm-hmm.
So again, quote, I'm proud to sign the supplemental budget that dedicates critical funding for hard-earned raises for workers, supports municipalities with covering the costs of special education, flood relief, sustains our emergency assistance program, and more. I'm grateful to our colleagues in the legislature for their partnership, Healey said in a statement. So that all sounds great on paper. But the reality is this budget was passed 6 months ago. And just now, we had bad flooding in farms. They have bills to pay. They had bills to pay 6 months ago. And they lost their crops, and they're just getting maybe the ball rolling now. This is not a government that wants to move fast on anything, and there's no excuse. This is what I'm literally taking it off. She and one of their first acts in office is they gave themselves their raises. That happened real quick.
Yeah.
And
it was 20%. I just want everyone to know, like,
that's insane.
When have you ever received a 20% raise? I never have. Never in my life.
So those
playing craziness.
100K go. I don't know what the numbers, but just for sake raw numbers. If correct me if I'm wrong, Joanna, a 20% raise would mean you go from 100,000 to 120,000.
Yeah, dude, that's what it would mean. And then it also means that the governor can
got a $20,000 bump. I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
But it's so shady that a Democratic government allows the governor to sign over their own raise at that rate too.
Don't tell me you can't get the other raises to people.
That's what I'm saying.
Get your bag. I'm not even mad about. I mean, I am mad, but like, if you can do it, you can do it for them.
I agree.
And so that we, the taxpayer, are saving any money here. This money, it just means it was sitting somewhere else and not in the hands of the workers that were told they could get it in July or August. You had bills pile up. Inflation's been crazy. We don't even do economics on this podcast, but the cost of living has gone up since before the pandemic.
Oh my God, so much. People know just from grocery shopping.
And we have more than enough to go around. It's pure greedflation.
It's evil too. It's evil. Like, we were told by the union to reach out to our constituents, which I did. Like, I tell everyone listening that we should do that. To reach out. So for our representative. So as a constituent, I did that. And I made sure in my region, it's Joe Comerford and Natalie Blay. Both were very responsive, but it was like they just kept saying that couldn't happen. They're working tirelessly on it. And so the last email that I got from Joe Comerford, I just felt very angry because at this point, I just want everyone to know, like Spencer said, we were given raises in our contracts with the state. And then we're told that we have to wait until this, budget is passed. And we have a Democratic controlled government right now. And it's just so ridiculous that they can't get it done. So then on top of it, when I think about how this is the way we're getting paid, I find it to be even more infuriating because I feel that it's very draconian. If it leaves it so that for 6 months people aren't getting paid, it's unacceptable. And if we're in a situation where it's all Democratic control, why can't they then change the way that we're getting paid? Just overall, like within the whole state system for workers. I just feel like it's wrong. People have children. It's a raise that I just will never forget that the governor gave themselves and other administration at the top 20% raises, signed over immediately went into effect. And they can't do the same for people who are teachers, many of whom are taking care of a lot of people's children um, most of the day. So I did write back to Joe Comerford's email, and I just want to talk to everyone about that because I feel like I did let her know that I think it is unbelievable that the system is in place. I also think I told her that I'll never forget that Governor Healy did give themselves that raise and how it was done. And Joe Comerford, I told Spencer this when before we were recording, had said like buckle up for the next fiscal fiscal cycle. And I will not buckle up. And I wrote that back to Senator Joanne Comerford. I will not buckle up for 2025. They need to all figure it out, buckle down, and make sure that things move smoothly. And I don't want to hear about it. It's an embarrassment nationally when like people are saying what you just said, Spencer, like vote blue no matter who, like they can't even do anything for us. And now that it's done, it's all like, oh yay, yay, yay. Well, I just think it's a long time to have to wait for a raise to go into effect. And there should be other ways. If something, just because something has been done a certain way for 100 years, if it's not working, then we can change it. That is the beauty of, I think, being, I don't know, human beings that are supposed to be evolving and changing and growing. And I think at the governmental level, there's so much we could do. So much. Yeah. So I was very angry, but now I am happy that it finally passed and that the state, the institution that I work with is quickly getting us the funds that we have been promised. So yeah, but it's crappy.
So I'm not shocked about Joe Cumberland's response to you specifically, or she sent a form letter.
She did write back even to me being angry too. They were upset. They were sorry that I was offended. And good for you. I don't care.
So my just full disclosure, I've also had issues with that office. I let her know I've had a meeting with her, and I've also before all this, when she was new in the Senate, I met her at a fundraiser, which that was probably the last political fundraiser I ever went to. They're fucking awful. They're evil.
They are awful.
It's in somebody's fucking ridiculous kitchen out in the hill towns, and there's bougie ass motherfuckers, and they all like talk a big game, and it's all vanity. And this is just the local level of Massachusetts. So I had a clue into that on the fundraising side. And then there was an actual issue that came up. She proposed a bill a couple years ago called Charlie's Law to enforce stricter penalties, enforce stricter penalties for people using, social media while driving.
Oh yeah, we've met with her before even.
And
So I'm sure she remembered my name.
I wasn't very kind.
No, we weren't. And that's the thing though, like I'm sorry to the governmental officials, but not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. If I were in their position, I wouldn't expect us to be kind about something like this. And I don't think there's nothing personal about her or Natalie Blay. Like it's just all of them at a collective. Like make it work, figure it out so that because they get so much time off. They're gonna go on recess now and get so much time. And they're not. If this didn't pass, they would have slept at night and been fine.
And thing is, the reason I'll be straight with everybody, so everybody doesn't think I'm just a meanie for no apparent reason. When I met with her, we were talking about this law, which encourages cops. We already have laws in the books about distracted driving. Okay, it doesn't matter what the specific issue was. Like distracted driving is distracted driving is distracted driving. We already have a fucking law about it. We don't need to have more laws about it and like creating up a new fun ways to punish people and destroy people's lives. Like instead of rehabilitating or solving the issue, like I don't know, public transportation, lots of things. There's lots of things we could be doing to alleviate this problem and this scourge of distracted driving because of cell phones and live streaming. There was a child that unfortunately was killed by somebody live streaming on their phone, even on the corner on a mount. And it was just like, I get the outrage. A kid was killed. I get it. I'm mad. I'm mad with you. It's unfortunate. Like, but also like I see this person that we live in a culture where you're encouraged to do shit like that. Let's just be real. And you're
I
in a culture
know.
everybody's has to be their own social media influencer and live streamer because maybe you'll get famous, or we also have to drive everywhere. So like I see the problem very differently. But to use a dead child to put up a bill which creates more reason or a new incentive program for cops to interact with the public and then to be more invasive in their investigation on why you swerved, they're going to start subpoenaing your fucking phone records and trying to see what your internet usage are. They're going to put more of these stingrays up to collect data on you. Like, what does all this mean? You're just encouraging a police state. And she's a big trans rights proponent. That's a big thing she's focused on. That's a big messaging thing. That's a big part of her overall brand, right? And I'm glad somebody's putting these issues on the forefront. I'm glad. I don't want to like belittle that somebody in power says they care about this. But if you look up the stats of how things go for trans people when they interact with the cop, it's not good. Their stats are not, they're not good outcomes. So you're creating a law that's going to put black, brown, marginalized, poor people, but like, and one of those marginalized people is trans. It's like you're creating laws that are going to hurt trans people, amongst others, because we have you also hired a bunch of pigs that are a bunch of white supremacists that have internal biases against anything that's not white exceptionalism. Am I crazy here? Like, in her pushing back on that, she like with Joanna, she didn't address my like, do you care about what do you call it? Do you care about do you care about the trans issue or don't you? Do you
I
care about
know.
the child
It
safety?
was
Don't
we
you?
did not get answers for a lot of the things.
She didn't address that, and just like she didn't address the fact that the governor took that money.
Yeah, so she did never address the in her emails back to me, I will say, and same with Natalie Blay. So it's not personal Joe Comerford. It's all of them.
Coward,
They
cowards.
get back to me and it's just pandering, but they don't address that. Like, can they do anything about the draconian system? And I want to give them credit and say that they may know more than me, but from past experiences working with select boards in small towns, sometimes the people in charge actually don't even know the rules. So that part's terrifying. And I don't know if that's true with them, but they didn't address like we're working on a better way to pay state workers or anything like that. And then the 20% thing, they could agree with me and be like, we think that's wrong too. If your value systems align with someone and you like agree that the governor shouldn't be allowed to sign themselves over a raise of 20%, then like you should say that. Um, and yeah, nothing. And that's unethical in my opinion. As someone who focuses on ethics every day as a job, as in like full time, my full time job does that. I think it's crazy. And I'm sorry, I just used the word. I think it's very unethical and evil that that is possible and not at all related to mental health. I think it's just a very bad way for governmental monies to be handled because it shows lack of oversight. And those governmental funds are majority of all of our tax dollars. And like we always say on the weed out, like the reason we're doing this, there's so many reasons. So one of them for me is so that we're all more aware of how our taxes are being spent, so that maybe we can someday change that.
For example, Andrew Kamir has brought this up many times. We are not legally allowed to audit the legislator.
And that's weird in a state that tries to have quote unquote transparency and be so
Oh, in the Supreme Court,
progressive.
they hide documents from us all the time, and there's
Mhm.
super majority Democrat state.
And the governor's office can and will do too. She has from Andrew.
So the point is, Gooler and tomfoolery, Massachusetts state government. If you're a blue dog Democrat in Massachusetts, I fucking hate your guts. Uh, do something about that. That's on you. That's a you problem. I'm sorry. I agree. I agree with the conservatives when they say that the Democrats just spend money like drunken sailors. They fucking do. They do, and also do harm with it too. They're like the worst kind of drunk spenders.
Yes, I mean, like, I don't hate you, but I just think I'm so embarrassed and disgusted and ashamed of the state government in a way that I am at all levels. And not just because it's a personal issue, it's just like seeing how things work. And again, for me, it goes back to like, I've said this before, like, I don't care what the founding fathers said. They were a group of frat boys that had powdered wigs and teeth from slaves. I don't care what they thought about society or what I should do. They probably thought I should marry them and have their kids. And I think that things that are attached to those old concepts, like these draconian ways of even paying state workers, need to be addressed and changed. And to talk about that shouldn't be so hard, especially if it's all democratically controlled. It's unreal.
Well,
And that's how I feel about that.
yeah, and I say I'm the reason I say fuck you to you people that are holding this back. Obviously, none of these people listen to the show. But
No, they don't.
if I just want to let you know, man.
If you're hate listening to us, shout out for making it this far, friends. Shout out.
The reason I hate you is because you get me sometimes on the same side as these fucking right wingers. Like,
Oh, well, I know what you
I
mean.
don't
I know
like
what you
sharing
mean, but
space with these people, but sometimes, like you'll say something either at a bar, like just out of passing, like, oh, Jesus Christ, can't fix a pothole or whatever, but there's money for this. And they agree with you, and you're like, no, we don't agree, bro. Like, like, fuck you. I don't want to be on their side. I want you to come and be reasonable with us. Like, just fucking idiots. Anyways, so yeah, Massachusetts infrastructure is crumbling. Um, Holyoke's infrastructures. We're a city built on a river and dams. Like, we can't afford our infrastructure to crumble. That was built 150 years ago, and it needs a lot of help. And so does every other city and town in Massachusetts.
totally. This is a weird fact about Holyoke's infrastructure that I think we have to visit in another time. But I was looking at where fluorinates the water still, and Holyoke still does.
Come
And
again?
it's bizarre. They put fluoride in your tap water in Holyoke. So
That's not standard everywhere.
no, it used to be like back in the day, like probably 70s, 80s.
I
And then
just
I looked up like there's an act in some cities where it kept it in place, but
uh,
Holyoke does it on their own still. I find it odd.
hmm.
So I would love to talk about that in the future. But anyone out there, if you know why or have anything, please email me at theweedout.com at gmail.com because I think it's very interesting.
I've
I
heard.
always, I don't want fluoride in the water.
Okay, so I got to look into this because I've heard a lot of crackpot theories about fluoride.
I
Like,
probably believe them, but I just don't want, I feel like I'm good.
I've heard some, microchip level weirdness.
Oh, no, 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 no. Not,
I've
that's
like,
not what I
I guess I
believe.
reflexively was like, okay, fluoride's probably not that bad if these people are saying this crazy shit. But
Well, and we're all fine. We're all
like
fine. We've
it's
drank water from
like
places that have had it.
this is why conspiracy theorists are assholes. They legitimize legitimate conspiracies.
But I do think it's
So
interesting that like
no,
not a lot of places do it now and they still do it because it's a cost probably. And that's where I was thinking. Because you know me.
anyways, so we're spending all this money on the executive branch, and if the argument is the executive branch of the government hadn't gotten a raise in a long time, it's like, well, then we have another problem. Stop incentivizing rich guys to run so they can.
Well, right.
You
And
know,
giving yourself a raise is not right. It's not the
that
way
should
to do
be,
things.
in my opinion, that should be a ballot question.
I agree. And like the amount and everything.
I think I think we can make
Even
it.
if it was a special ballot, it should be approved by the people. If we have to wait 6 months for a union, I'm sorry. I don't know. But yeah.
So I've had the pleasure of dealing with a couple of our state senators, and I don't like any of them. Um, and I feel like they are really more committed to the status quo. And they're Democrats, so we can do better here in Massachusetts. I know there's a lot of people here that are sick of it, and we can do better. Maybe we can set the standard for the rest of the country. I mean, in my opinion, I wish we didn't have borders, and we just lived in communities. But as long as we have these nation states, you know, if we can change things locally, like push the GOP completely off the map, maybe the Democrats become the reactionary right, like they already are, and then we can actually have some sort of worker united front. So, investigate alternative options on ballots. If you like their policies, you look up their platform. There's multiple alternatives running in Massachusetts. Nothing in my fucking district, of course. But there are places where challengers are coming and they're not part of the establishment nor wanting to be. And we got to start a coalition of workers. And this example, what Joanna is living through, is it just galvanizes my reasoning there, because supermajority Democrat doesn't even get anything done, and that's why it's cooler in tomfoolery. Vote blue no matter who, baby. Blue team, red team.
I
Go.
know.
They both like cops. Like, let's think about it. Like, if you see Congress actually getting along these days, it's cop spending, and even the Republicans are pushing back, but that's more performative. But they wanted to spend the money on the border. The border cops, because we successfully dehumanized all southern bodies. So yeah, Gooler and Tom Fuller, everybody. And this was I'm sure hopefully a good episode for y'all to listen to. Pretty heavy stuff. So thank you for listening along. Look forward to more content coming on the next couple weeks. Thank you to the core crew that's always coming through. We see you, we appreciate you, and as always, feel free to reach out to us at theweedout@gmail.com. Go to our website, go to any of our social medias, click on the link trees. There's a million ways to get in contact with us, so feel free to do that, and give us anything you think we should talk about in the future. Anything, I don't know. If you need help organizing, reach out to us. That's it for me. Joanna, do you have anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
Just take care, everyone, and try to stay well.
Later.